Thank you for listening to Hustle and Heart. I'm your host, Edie Weintraub. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Angela Hepler. She's a certified restaurant coach using the TRC method and extensive experience as an independent restaurant owner. With over 25 years of restaurant ownership in a demanding Chicago market, means she has seen and lived through any and all things that you are experiencing now. She's fully trained in the TRC method with her primary focus being on profitability, getting you there and keeping you there so you can have the restaurant and the life you've dreamed of. Angela, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Edie, for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks.
Of course. So tell us about your journey. What would you like our listeners to know about the work that you are doing today?
Okay, so, my journey started all the way back when I was 15 and I started working in restaurants. My mom was an entrepreneur and a business owner in Michigan. And when I was 15, I would go into the mall with her because her shop was at the mall, and I started working in restaurants then, just literally just making like Philly cheesesteak sandwiches and trying to make my own living so I could, have the DoorDash jeans that everybody else had in school. So I started working in restaurants when I was 15. Continued to work in them in high school. Domino's Pizza had just opened up, and so I worked at Domino's Pizza, Little Caesars, moved on to Michigan State, worked as a cocktail waitress, moved on to Loyola in Chicago, and started managing restaurants at the young age of 22. And then eventually went on to open my first restaurant when I was 27, named Sushi Wabi in the West Loop of Chicago. And sushi at that time was not what it is now. That's 27 years ago. So it was somewhat of a big risk to do that. In fact, a lot of people were saying to me at the time, there's no way that Chicago people are going to eat sushi because they're meat and potato eaters. But at the time I had worked and opened a restaurant in Los Angeles for a man there as his right-hand man. And so I had learned the business, and I had written a business plan at UCLA called the course was called Business Development for Entrepreneurs. And my restaurant the business plan was written in that course. So I came back to Chicago, quote unquote, my home away from home, and met my business partner, Susan Trina Thompson, and together we opened the first I would say hip and kind of Americanized sushi restaurant in the city of Chicago 27 years ago. And it was a hit right out the door. It was just the right thing at the right time with the right people, and it worked. And from there, we went on to open De Cero Hello Tacos, a fish. It was based off of like the whole fish tacos, and we had 13 other a la carte tacos. And then we went across the street, and I opened an Indian restaurant and a grass-fed burger bar, a jazz New Orleans live music venue, a saloon on the second floor. I feel like I'm missing some more things. We went on to open up Sushi Daku years later, and then Booze Box, a Japanese izakaya underneath. And so within the 27 years, I opened almost a dozen concepts in what's called the West Loop of Chicago. And so I pretty much live and breathe anything and everything you can imagine when it comes to restaurants. And now just before COVID, actually a year before COVID, I had moved my family to our farm in Michigan because we were going back and forth every weekend or every week, and I homeschooled my kids. So I had the ability to give my children what it felt like to grow up on land. And then also live in the city and have culture and education. So it was kind of like we were living kind of in two worlds. And homeschooling my kids allowed me to do that. And then eventually, as I got older and I had, 27 years in the business, I worked my way to Michigan. I worked my way to a lifestyle that I have now, which is homeschooling my kids and working with other restaurant owners and helping them succeed and, fight the fight that the restaurants fight every day, restaurant owners fight. And now I work with, I'm super honored to work with a company, a gentleman named Donald Burns, who I really believe is the world's best restaurant coach in the world. And he has trained four of us as certified restaurant coaches, me being the only female in the group. So I feel quite honored. And we help restaurants all over the world become successful, and Yeah, so that's what I do on a daily basis. I also run a catering company here in Michigan. I serve the wedding sector, all the barns in the area, Blue Dress Barn, Mill Creek Barn, to name a few, Sundance Studio, and I have a team of chefs and servers who serve the weddings in the area. So those are the two things I focus on. The restaurant coaching is my primary role these days, and I'm building the team at the catering company to support me to be able to do that. Yeah, so.
And it's beautiful that you still have your hands in it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
As you're working through the consulting part of it, because, catering, as we all know, is so much different than just running a brick and mortar restaurant where you've got guests coming in, you've got reservations. I mean, catering requires such a different skill. So I appreciate that you've been able to continue that path and have that experience. So you're sharing with them, the lessons you've learned from restaurants, but also in the catering world.
Yeah, absolutely. And catering is a great additional revenue stream for a lot of restaurants that they, in this day and age, they really do need to tap into to support, sometimes lunches aren't as busy and you have a full-time staff and you're trying to find ways to build revenue during those hours, and catering is one of those great ways to do that. So I feel pretty lucky to be able to share that knowledge with them and give them ways to really, fluff up those daytime sales. Yeah.
I want to take a step back though, because you helped someone open in LA. Were they opening a sushi restaurant? And so as you pulled kind of your experience there, you said, I'm going to do sushi in Chicago. I'm wondering where that influence of sushi came from.
Yeah, that's exactly where it came from. So I like I said, I became Lee Main's basically his business manager, and I was working in the restaurant while I was taking that course at UCLA. And we were asked to pick a business to write a business plan on. That was the whole thing. It's like, learn how to write a business plan. So you had to choose the name, which ended up being Sushi Wabi. You had to choose the location, ended up being in the West Loop of Chicago. So it literally walked me through the process of opening my restaurant on paper. And I honestly believe, without a doubt, that course changed my life, because not only did I write my business plan, it taught me how to write a business plan. And writing a business plan is I've never opened a business without a business plan since then, because it literally requires you to write your ideas down on paper before you even start. So you're not shooting from the hip. And honestly, the TRC method is a lot like that I work with the restaurant coaching. It's a plan, it's a program, and it has to be, it must be in order. You have to do the first P before the second P, before the third P. We have a 3P process, and it's that plan, that strategy, those frameworks that you lay out that you're able to succeed. Because a lot of times restaurant owners are playing checkers. They're like, this happens, I'll do this. This happens, I'll do this. And they don't have a lot of strategy. And that lack of strategy and, foresight, thinking ahead, is what can create a restaurant that's out of control. That's literally running your life and you're not running it, So yeah, I think that that's where Sushi Wabi was born. It was born in that class, and the fact that I was like, man, if I could bring this kind of restaurant back to the city of Chicago, because I'd already worked in the city in restaurants and I knew exactly that neighborhood, and I was like, oh yeah, this would totally work, So it inspired me to bring that concept back to Chicago.
And I think having that foundation, going through that process, you can plug and play whatever that menu is differently, right? Obviously the aesthetics, the design, the feel of a sushi restaurant is going to be very different than the jazz bar or the grass-fed burger you described. So, but because you had that foundation, you were able to peel back that portion, but then continue to grow into other cuisines.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I would go through all the different aspects, the summary, the SWOT analysis, the competitive edge, all of that. Anytime I was coming up with a new restaurant concept, I would walk mentally and, I would walk through that and then write it down so that I was prepared. Because we, restaurant owners, we come up with a great idea. We're like, oh, this, for example, I'm working with someone right now in Croatia, and they brought the Philly cheesesteak sandwich from the United States to their country, and they have this great product, and they come up with a process, but they've forgotten all the stuff before that, all the planning and all the stuff that needs to happen before you just plop a sandwich down. Like you can't it's not just an idea and then a process. There's so much that happens before that makes you successful.
having worked with restaurateurs in the real estate side of things, I've come up with almost a 50-page checklist in regards to what you need to get there, right? You need to form your LLC. You need to make sure your finances are in order. In order to sign a lease, you need to make sure not only do you have money to pay the rent for a year, but also you've got open and operating expenses, inventory, etc. So there is so much preparation. And I feel like it's a little like painting. I love painting, but I hate the 90% of it is prepping to paint, right? You have to lay something down on the floor. You have to put the tape out. You have to get the paint ready. You have to make sure it's shaken up. And I just like to paint. So I know that there's so much more that goes into it in advance of opening those doors, and just, hoping you're successful and people will come. So I think it's really important to have that foundation and people like yourselves to guide them through that process. They may have fallen in love with Philly cheesesteak and said, we don't have this, let's do it. But the support of someone like yourself to make sure that they're not only getting it open and operating, but profitable.
Yep, absolutely. And we actually work with restaurant owners that are already open, so independent restaurant owners that are struggling, that they found themselves in a place where they're like, whoa, we didn't expect this, or all of a sudden it becomes very hard, or, they're not sleeping at night, they can't meet payroll, they have a toxic culture, whatever it is that they're going through. And we basically step them back and say, okay, let's start from the beginning and let's get this straight. Because, a lot of times they want the low hanging fruit, like, oh, we think we need more marketing, we need more sales, we need more this. And the truth is that if you don't fix the holes of the bucket and you just keep throwing sales into that bucket, they're just going to leak back out. It really is about establishing a foundation. You must start at the beginning, establish a foundation, then put your walls up, and then put the roof up, and then you can, and then you can open the floodgates of marketing all you want, but you first have to fix the holes, So I see. It basically help those who perhaps maybe rushed into it too much, or didn't have a plan, or thought it was going to be something that it wasn't, So we assist those who are somewhat in trouble, and need help.
Has it been complicated doing work internationally? I know that the process is very familiar, but maybe sometimes like securing the real estate or permitting, construction, I've got to imagine that that's, a little bit more complicated outside the US. Walk us through how that relationship international consulting gig came about.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I don't help them with creating their restaurant from the ground up. So they are already open and they are in trouble and they need help. So I would say the biggest obstacle for me is sometimes as simple as their accent. I can't understand what words they're saying. Their currency, the way that their P&L statements are, in general, they're organized the same way, but it's a different software or it's a different way of looking at it. Understanding their market. It's really important for me to do a lot of research and see what city they're in, how many people live there, what street are they on, do they have parking, because I really need to understand where they're located, like the feel of the city, and so those are the things that I would say I struggle the most with in terms of just trying to communicate with them and understand where they're at. But restaurants are restaurant. Like these things it's amazing to see how it really doesn't change. It's the same animal. It's the same, usually it's the same problems. Typically it's, they have not built a culture. It's the owner's mindset. It's, they don't even understand their food costs. They've never even priced out their food costs. They have any idea how much things cost in relationship to what they're charging. They don't have a bookkeeping system set up, or it really is. So restaurateurs are very creative and they're givers, and they don't always come with a lot of business savvy. So it's our job to help them and get them over the hump and make them successful and stay there. So, and we've had so much success. It's so incredible to have such an incredible impact with them. It's the best thing in the world.
Yes. Well, so rewarding too, to see the fruits of your labor come to fruition and be able to see that on the balance sheet. I find that a lot of times, chefs, and I think they've done a better job in culinary school, but to teach the business of, right? So like doctors go to school to become doctors. They don't go to school to open a practice. Just like dentists, they go to school to be dentists. They don't learn the business of it. And I think that is so important, because what you find is, here they are making all this money, but they don't know the best way to invest it. And maybe they're not the best in terms of managing their team. And so these folks, just out of curiosity, they're creatives, or they're a chef that opened the restaurant. How did this all come about?
Yeah, a lot of them are chefs, or they are couples. The husband or wife is the chef, and the other side is the front of the house. But I have a lot of single, like just a chef, generally the singles are chefs, and it's always about, this is a great idea, this is going to go to market, this is going to be amazing, and they just don't have the business side. They don't have the business side or the human resource side. So those two, they expect everybody to manage and to have the same passion as they do, and that's just not the way it works. Until you share your heart and your core values with your team, they have no idea what you're thinking. And you can't just assume that a team is going to understand what you're thinking. So a lot of it has to do with that, and a lot of it has to do with just all they're focusing on is the food. That's it. Like if the food's good, that's it. And that almost becomes like such an obsession and passion that it doesn't even matter at times that they're not making money, until they're like find themselves in a hole that they can't get out of, or unless they seek help. So it's interesting how the passion is so driven that they lose sight of the fact that it's a business, and that's typically our client as a chef that's so focused on the food and has no idea what their food cost is, has no idea how to build a culture, has no idea how to read a P&L statement, so I help them through that. I help them regain their footing and get their restaurant back.
Kind of therapy too, isn't it?
And it is, and get their life back. Like literally just get their life back. And it's a treacherous business if you don't go in with a plan and you don't get help.
Well, and I've got to imagine this part of your process too. You're talking them through, especially if it's someone that's got one or a couple. Let's think about your exit strategy. How many do we need to open? Are we growing corporately? Are we going via franchise? And when do you know when that time is? What's the goal? So I'm curious for you, when did you realize, I'm good, I don't want to be in operations anymore myself, but I love the industry so much that I'll continue, I'll have the farm, I'll have the catering offering, but I really want to help others be more successful?
Yeah. So I am just like one of my clients, where I built my restaurants very quickly, one after the other, like boom, 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 in a matter of like, I don't know, 15 years, I'd opened all of them. And I opened up, honestly, way too fast. We say in the TRC method, when people get to the top, they either get bored and they start taking on things that they shouldn't, or start adding stuff to their menu that they shouldn't, or they start backsliding. I suffered from boredom. Like I just kept adding to the point where my actual body broke down. So I don't know if I shared this with you before, but in 2017, I was diagnosed with a skull tumor. And I will tell you that I think that's from an enormous amount of stress. At that point, I had so many concepts rolling, so many employees, and I was at the point where I was in a constant state of problem solving. Like there was never a moment where I felt like I could relax. And so I think my body just was like, okay, it was demonstrating that, it was physically demonstrating that kind of stress. So I went in for emergency. So I was diagnosed with it 2015. Of course, I ignored it because I thought, oh, it'll just go away. It's no big deal. And I was going for MRI here and there. And in 2017, I belonged to an organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. And one of my foreign brothers asked me about the skull tumor that I had mentioned in another meeting, and he's like, "How's that skull tumor? You haven't brought it up." And I was like, "Oh, I've gone in for my MRIs, and they haven't called me back, and I really haven't heard anything." And he's like, "No, that's not how it works." that business is whoever's in front of them, they deal with, so I made a phone call, got back in front of the surgeon, and I was in emergent surgery the next day, and so when I went into that surgery, I was so terrified. I was terrified that I was going to lose my life, and I didn't know how to say goodbye. I have 3 children, 3 girls, and I could not say goodbye to them because I didn't want to frighten them, but I also was terrified that I would never see them again. And when I woke up out of that surgery, I felt like I got a second chance. And from there, I woke up and I was like, to my husband at the time, I was like, we're closing that restaurant, this person's going, and I just started making all the hard decisions that I could not make before then were like effortless, and I started downsizing and really I let go of some things that weren't working for me, and I kept the things that were. And so that was 2017, right? And then so it wasn't shortly after that COVID hit. And when COVID hit, I was already downsizing, and I'd already been in the business for 27 years. And I already knew that I bought my catering company in 2014. So I had already had a exit strategy, which was when I was going to leave the city, I was going to have this catering company, and I was going to, be catering all these weddings. I already, in fact, was already catering in Michigan when I made that choice. That's the thing. It's like having an exit plan and having foresight and knowing where you're going is so important, regardless of whatever choice it is, The exiting is a plan, and it is okay. A lot of restaurateurs think that it's almost like you're failing. You're not failing by exiting, you're making a choice. And I made a choice to live a different lifestyle. I was ready for it. I was 50, 52, 51, 52 years old, and I was ready for it, And I had I had made my mark, so I really didn't want to be one of those restaurateurs that was, 60 years old, pounding their head into the wall, trying to get, customers in the door when new concepts were opening up with a younger, energy to it. I mean, that's just that's the world of restaurant. There's always something new. So always something creative and new happening. So I knew when I was ready, and so I made that plan, and it's worked out. So
All right, thank you for sharing that. How did you get connected with Donald Burns?
Oh, so this is interesting. So I started working with a company called Skytail Digital, doing webinars, and they hired me to teach any topic for restaurants. And I would go on and teach about P&L statements or how to build a catering, program in your restaurant. And then I don't really know how we came across each other, but I think I saw one of his Instagram videos or something, and I was like, wow, this guy is he knows his stuff, And so I went to one of his mastermind, Sunday mastermind thing he does for a couple hours, where you get kind of a taste for what he does. And I was just deeply impressed. I mean, I felt like I was listening to somebody who had not only had lived my life, but who just really understood the business. And so I reached out to him, and I just basically said, I want to learn this business. I want to learn what you know. And he agreed. So I took his course for restaurant coaches, and I learned the system, and I became one of his 4 coaches. Yeah. So.
And was this while you had your restaurants? Where did this fall in terms of time?
Oh no, this is when I had my catering company. This is the restaurants have been sold and or closed, and I'm here in Michigan. Yeah. So it's been fantastic. Yeah.
Beautiful. So then does he help as it relates to marketing, or you're meeting folks because of your relationships in the industry?
So he owns the Restaurant Coach, and it's the TRC method was designed and created by him, and he and the 4 of us focus on coaching. And then we're in partnership with, it's called Restaurant Growth, the company. They formerly were Skytail Digital, which happened to be the same company I told you I worked with, right? So it's all the synergy, it's all working, we're all in the same, and so they focus on the marketing and we focus on the coaching. So one of the things that's really important is the coaching needs to come before the marketing, because if it's out of order and you throw money into a restaurant that isn't in order, doesn't have their ducks in a row, you're just throwing money out the door. So that's the one thing that SkyTel, now Restaurant Growth, understood, was that they needed support like we needed support. So we work together in tandem to help these restaurant owners be unstoppable. Honestly, it's the best marketing company in the world, along with the best coaching company in the world, hand in hand, and embracing these restaurant owners, because frankly, we're sick of seeing them suffer. Like, we want to make a difference. It's like, it does not need to be this way. So,
what do you think? I'm curious, given your time in the industry, now going into coaching, you're exposed to so much, and I'm sure very up to speed in regards to, challenges with labor and minimum wage and things like that. What do you see as the evolution of food and beverage?
The food and beverage, restaurants in general have created kind of their own reputation of being in a place where you're not paid enough, you're not listened enough, you're living paycheck to paycheck. And honestly, I believe that's what we're ending with the TRC method and SkyTel, or now Restaurant Growth. We are creating restaurants that are built on a solid foundation, that build a culture that creates a team that are committed to being there, not because they have to be there, because they want to be there, that are paid well, that are listened to, that are dominate the market. These restaurants that we help, they go on to dominate their market, because I'm going to be honest, it really comes down to the owner's mindset and the culture that they're building. It all starts there, and if you try to skip it, it'll never work. It just doesn't work, and that's the core of the problem right there. That's the core. And if you get that right, the other thing I want to talk about is, I hear so many people complaining about how expensive restaurants are now. So say, oh my God, I can't believe the chicken sandwich is $17.99, or I can't believe the pizza we got 4 pizzas and it was $100. And I'm like, do you understand that restaurants have been feeding, started with farmers, now restaurants, have been feeding the public for so long, for so little. And they accept it because they love this business so much. They're finally stepping up to the plate and saying, I can't do this unless I charge you what I need to charge you. I'm not going to do this anymore for pennies or nothing. I'm going to do it with integrity and taking care of myself and my family and this community all at once. And once the public understands that they need to support that and stop complaining about it, they will get better results. Everything takes both sides. And for me, when I hear that, I'm saying, you know what? We need to retrain the public's perception of what it means to own a restaurant and
Absolutely.
What it takes to own a restaurant. It's not all romantic and roses. This is not, and we don't have to serve you to the point where we're dying. We will serve with integrity, and we will charge you what we need to charge you to enable to make a living, to pay our team, and to make a living and take care of our family. And we need you to honor that.
No, I so appreciate that, because nothing drives me.
That's where I think it's going. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing drives me more crazy than cutting a strawberry open and it being white and lifeless and dead inside, and it doesn't even smell like a strawberry. But I think also teaching the public, it's good to eat things in season. It's good to eat things that are close to you. I interviewed a couple of weeks ago a farmer in Georgia, and he had a friend in town visiting from Denver, Colorado. And he said to the farmer, I'd really love for you to ship me, the beef. And the farmer said, no, you live in Denver. It is important for you as, a Denver resident to eat locally. That is where you're going to take the best care of your body and your soul and your energy and the soil that surrounds you. And he refused to ship it to him. And that, as crazy as it sounds, it brought me so much joy, because it's so important. And I think, unfortunately, we're too far removed from our food and knowing where it comes from and how, what goes into making it. And I think educating the public, as you mentioned, will help them better understand what things cost, why good quality food costs so much, right? If you're growing it in love and attention, you can't mass produce it, and then end up with strawberries that are completely white on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other part about that is that this might be controversial, but I don't know. But for me, it's frustrating as a restaurant owner that some of the times I had to deal with the health department. For example, if I have an acre of blueberries on my farm, and if I brought the blueberries from my farm directly to my restaurant, I got a ticket. And I'm like, I'm not allowed to have food that doesn't go through their FDA approved system, right? So, or if I, brought 2 dozen eggs and use those as burger toppers, and they didn't go through a proper system of vendor that were checked, I'm like, they're fresh from my farm. Like, what? So unfortunately what happens is a lot of restaurants either have to, unfortunately, sneak the product into their restaurant so that the health department doesn't see it, or get a ticket. So you're forced to use something from, let's just say, Gordon's versus something local that you could get from a local farmer because you're not allowed. So that needs to change. And I think I understand why the federal government is concerned about, the health department is concerned about, they don't know the quality of those eggs. They don't know how they were handled. They don't know if the blueberries were washed. They don't know if there's bugs. I get that, but it's just so frustrating that you can't use something that's so fresh and so close, and something's got to bend there, and I see a lot of farmers frustrated with that too. I see them, they're really frustrated that they have to go through, quote unquote, this system of, being inspected and going to a distributor, and the distributor then goes to, to this warehouse and this way. It's like 2 weeks later, and that's why they have to pick unfresh items, because it's got to go through this entire system. So that would be helpful. That would be helpful if you could use things around you with ease,
Well, and I'm based in Georgia. We've got Georgia grown. I traveled recently to South Carolina, and I know that they're promoting South Carolina grown products. So maybe it's part of that system that helps push, farm to table within a certain distance, so that way it could be more supportive and maybe go through that system a little bit more smooth.
Yeah, faster,
Yes.
So faster and with less fuss, So yeah. But now with the weddings now, I have so many. I live in the fruit and vegetable belt of the Midwest, right here in the southwest corner of Michigan, where my catering company is. And my neighbors are cucumber farmers, asparagus, cherries, apples, peaches. Everything you could even imagine. So I have the ability to serve the freshest food for my catering company because it's right here. And I get it at there's a fruit market called Fruit Acres, where all the farmers bring their product, and I shop from there, So I love it.
Gotta feel really good, right? Coming from your neighbors, and they're doing great things, so you can all support one another.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
So outside of your professional life, what fuels, the immense energy that you get to exude in your current role?
I would say my mindset. I do a lot of meditation. I work out a lot. I'm driven to live a life that I'm proud of, that I can feel good about every day. My children, being able to homeschool my children and be around them all the time is just a blessing. My faith, it's important to me too. And, for me, it's like day by day, moment by moment, choice by choice. There's nothing worse than living in regret of the past or living in anxiety of the future. So I've learned that just having every moment and every person you come across with being a positive influence in their life is really the reality of having true joy. It's not looking too far. Yes, you must have a plan when it comes to business and exit plans, but I'm talking about having anxiety about the future to the point where it can freeze you. I don't live there anymore. So that's, I think, what fuels me the most. Yeah.
Do you see any of your children following in your footsteps?
Not really. Maybe my oldest daughter in the hospitality, she is a wedding coordinator right now at one of the barns, and she's just fantastic with people. She's just one of those people that I don't know how to explain it. She's just full of energy and life, and she makes everybody around her so happy. And then my middle daughter, she really wants to get into language. She studies languages, and she's a pianist. She's more of a, I would call her an introvert. But she is super helpful with like systems around here. But I don't think she's into the cooking and the catering part of it. And my youngest daughter is a dancer, and that's what she wants to do for her life. She wants to dance professionally. So it may not happen. Maybe it's maybe someone else buys my catering company for me, and I get to. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as they love it. I don't, that's it. You got to love feeding people. You got to really love it.
Yeah. I think that's the best part about it is that, I tell everybody that we serve those who serve others. And that brings us so much joy because we get to see that full life cycle. Having curated food halls, the best part of the feedback that they gave me is that they didn't want to be in a ghost kitchen. They wanted to see the people enjoy their food. They wanted to deliver it to them, see the smiles on their faces, and get that feedback. It's much like a musician, right? When you're performing, you get that feedback from the audience and they're cheering you on or they're singing along. And so it's nice to have that energy bounce off of one another.
Absolutely. Actually, my why or my motto at my catering company is food and service so good it's emotional. Because that is the driving force for me, is that when I go to a wedding and I have fed their family and I get this emotional response from them and just like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing food I've ever had. Not only the most amazing wedding food, but the best meal I've ever had. There's nothing better than that. And that's why we all ultimately do that. What we do is like just to have that positive influence in people's lives and to create and bring families together and create memories. It's like, it's fantastic. Like the dinner table is so important to the family. Whether it's in your own dinner table or a restaurant or in a wedding barn, it's center, the whole, what do they say, like breaking bread together is so central to the family and the community,
I think that's, it's oftentimes the only time that you get a chance to sit and chat with one another and have that, the most valuable resource is time. And so if you can sit there, break bread, how was your day, what's going on, it's priceless.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I agree with you there. It's fantastic. And
go ahead.
My grandparents were both working farmers. My mom and my dad were both raised on working farms, and I realized how that passes on. Even though I'm not a quote unquote farmer, I'm still feeding the public. And I think that is something that will always be part of our family, and it's because it started that way. Just the joy of feeding others. Yeah.
Cool. So where can our listeners learn a little bit more about you and the services that you offer?
They can go to restaurantgrowth.com and look for the coaching. There's a coaching link. Hit that link and ask for me. Yeah, when they hit the link. And that's probably the best way to go about it. That way they get the full package, Yeah.
For sharing. So big thank you to our guest today, Angela Hepler, for sharing such valuable insights on her love for Mother Earth and the restaurants she supports. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, keep savoring the flavors of success and stay hungry for more stories from the leaders and innovators in the culinary world.
My name is Angela Hepler, and you're listening to Hustle and Heart.